Hi, myself Amish Rashwat from the Electronics Era magazine, and now we interact with Mr. Chris Michel, Vice President Global Advocacy at, and Intelligence Global Electronics Association. And my first question for you is, sir, that the global electronics plays a critical role in shaping the worldwide electronics ecosystem. Could you share the association's current global advocacy priorities and how they align with emerging manufacturing trends?
Sure. So at the Global Electronics Association, our mission is to help support the industry's growth and also strengthen supply chain resilience. And obviously, we need to be doing this within the context of a very dynamic industry with innovation taking place all the time. So from an advocacy perspective, it means that we're working closely with governments in order to encourage them to support that growth. And in some places around the world, that growth is necessary in order to support a baseline ecosystem for electronics manufacturing. So there are some places around the world where the ecosystem is eroded, where electronics manufacturing is very weak. And yet there are other places where the industry is growing very rapidly. And we have an interest, whether it is in those areas where the industry is weak or where the industry is strong and continuing to grow. We have an interest in working with governments so that they understand what this ecosystem looks like and that they are taking steps to promote its growth through support for R&D, through greater investments in domestic capabilities, and then also by safeguarding that access to the broader global supply chain. Finally, I would say that talent is at the core of our industry, and we need to make sure that we are continuing to invest in talent and a skilled workforce to ensure that the industry is able to grow at the pace that we would like.
Could you please give me any example of you were mentioning about countries?
Sure. So, and I'll contrast a bit based upon where we have worked historically. So, in the United States and Europe, the electronics manufacturing has eroded quite a bit, and we believe that these governments in these areas, they need to be taking steps to more explicitly provide funding and policy support for the PCB industry, the EMS industry. By and large, we have not seen these kind of investments take place. And as a result, the capabilities and capacities are not there to support the domestic needs. And so we see that there's an opportunity to do more. We believe that every country should have an electronics strategy in order to facilitate that growth. Contrast that with India, for example, where the electronics manufacturing industry is already very strong, but has very lofty ambitions. And we want to be working more closely with the government here as well to support workforce investments and also to promote stronger trade relationships that lead to more exports from India to the United States and to Europe and so forth.
Yeah. And my next question is that, sir, supply chain, how can industry associations help accelerate the adoption of international standards and best practices among manufacturers, especially in rapidly growing markets like India?
Yeah, so this is a big topic, right? Because ultimately, this supply chain is global. Our industry is global, and it means that the standards that we rely on must be global as well. And so it is important. I think there's an important role for associations like the Global Electronics Association in bringing companies together to help develop those standards. And that means making sure that there are countries that companies globally are represented on these standards development committees. So that's the first, is to make sure that there's the right geographic representation on these committees. But it also means that the committees must be doing work with an understanding that innovation is fast-paced and we need to make sure that the standards are keeping up with emerging technologies. And I know at the Global Electronics Association, while I'm not on the standards team, I know that this is a really important topic for the standards team, because they know that in order for our standards to be relevant in the marketplace, they must keep pace with this innovation. And so they're working very closely with companies to make sure that the revisions in our standards are taking place, and that they can be relied upon by companies to then integrate into their electronics manufacturing to support their customers.
Okay, thanks. And my next question is that supply chain resilience has become a key industry focus after recent global disruptions. What lessons has the electronics industry learned, and what strategical changes are now being implemented?
So you're right that we've had a number of developments globally that have underscored the importance of supply chain resilience. And so I think companies have learned, number one, that they need to be intentional about supply chain resilience. They need to make sure that resilience is baked into their business strategy and operations. They also, I think, have an appreciation for the fact that it comes at a cost, right? In the past, we've optimized supply chains for efficiency and for cost. And while that helped to support the industry's growth, it also came with very big risks. And so companies today are understanding that they need to be diversifying their supply chains in more meaningful ways, which means bringing oftentimes manufacturing closer to where their customers are. But they're doing so in an environment in which cost still matters, right? Yes. And so I think that there are a number of different strategies that companies are using to support supply chain resilience, not just diversifying their supply chains, but I think also understanding, having a better connectivity to what demand looks like in the marketplace, and being able to move more quickly when disruptions take place.
And in my previous question, you answered about the India emissions in R&D, and it's about development in R&D also. So according to you, how India can strengthen its electronic supply chain ecosystem to become a more dependable global manufacturing hub?
Well, what I see is India already doing a lot of the right things. They have developed public investment schemes that are leaning to investment in the industry, both in terms of R&D, but also in terms of new facilities. And this is fantastic. So I think, and I would say that everything that I see is that there is a willingness on the part of the government to experiment, learn from those experiments, and reorient based upon where they believe investments will have the greatest impact. So I think that is key. It also is, again, in this environment, incredibly important that the industry is building the capabilities that reflect these kind of emerging technology trends.
Yeah.
And again, we see the advancements in the semiconductor industry driving new requirements across the supply chain. And I think our belief is that those countries that succeed in this global marketplace are those countries that understand the technology trends and how those technology trends affect segments across the electronics supply chain. And again, I think, in this visit that I've had to India, you see the right kind of conversations taking place, which is exciting. That they are looking not just at the semiconductor industry, but how, again, those advancements in the semiconductor industry are driving innovation across the supply chain, and there's a lot of excitement about that. So again, I think that there's a lot that's happening that is fantastic here. Again, I think from our perspective at the association, we want to be a good partner to the government of India, and we also believe that ultimately, no one company, no one country has all the answers, right? So as we think about success in this space, there's engagement, international engagement required, and an ability to convene stakeholders to understand the opportunities and pursue them.
Sure, India is Indian government also give a lot of PLIs and initiative also to be India as a semiconductor hub. Yes, yeah, lots of initiative done by the government. Yes. And my next question is that, sir, aerospace and defense electronics require extremely high reliability and compliance standards. How is the industry evolving to meet the growing demand for mission critical electronic systems?
Yeah, so historically, I think this is a sector, a manufacturing sector that has placed reliability and quality ahead of innovation. And so you've seen the commercial market in many ways outpace, in terms of innovation, outpace the defense market and aerospace market. But I think that's changing, right? You're seeing a desire on the part of the defense electronics companies, and you see this reflected in the comments of defense ministries around the world, that there is this desire to better integrate new technologies, cutting edge technologies, into their platforms and weapon systems. This is this is a challenge, of course, because you still need to, even as you seek to integrate those new technologies, you need to make sure that you maintain that high standard for reliability and quality. And I think this is where it comes down to standards, and to what degree can industry give that same focus to quality and reliability, even in an environment in which that technology is changing so rapidly. And I think the only way to do that is, again, just as we've always done in this industry, bringing the right people together to develop the standards that then give confidence to governments that the military technologies they're sourcing meet those high requirements.
Okay, thanks for the explanation, sir. And my next question is, what role do advanced testing, traceability, and certification framework play in improving reliability in aerospace and defense electronics manufacturing?
So, without repeating some of what I offered in the previous question, I think that what we're seeing as well in the defense space, again, given this incredibly complex and sophisticated supply chain that supports aerospace and defense, there is an even higher need for secure, trusted supply chains, and that includes an even greater focus on traceability. Yeah, and I think the industry still has a lot of work to do in promoting trust within a commercial space. And I also believe that governments have a lot more work to do in making sure that there are standards in place and processes in place to ensure trust across defense technologies. We see that there is a very high focus on security in semiconductor chips, but I don't know that we have the same kind of robust conversation taking place around the wider manufacturing ecosystem for electronics. Yeah, and so we are always, as we the governments, and I referenced earlier the need for electronics strategies. I think the same is true as strategies to secure the supply chain and to ensure assured electronics. And this is where the standards are very important.
Okay. And my next question is, what additional steps are necessary for India to improve its export competitiveness in high-value electronics manufacturing?
So you referenced earlier the semiconductor initiatives. I think that that's a big part of it, right? India is very much focused right now on building its semiconductor industry. I think as it builds its semiconductor industry, you'll also see advancements being made in its printed circuit board industry. So that I think those kinds of investments are critical, right? In building those capabilities, and not just building the capabilities to achieve the state of the practice, but being a leader in developing the state of the art, right? And so these are important areas we would argue for India to continue to invest in. But there's also this kind of strong foundation that supports that supports the industry anywhere and everywhere. And again, we talked about the workforce, and the workforce is critical to that. Again, this is a global industry, and because the industry is global, they have established practices and standards in order to ensure that suppliers half a world away are in a position to manufacture to those standards, and that they have workers that are credentialed to those standards. And this injects confidence into this manufacturing ecosystem. And so, this is another area where, we would like to continue to work with stakeholders in India in order to build that credentialed workforce, so that as companies around the world look to source electronics, they see that not only is there a skilled workforce, a strong skilled workforce as there is today in India, but that those skilled workers are also credentialed by the industry standards.
Okay. My next is, emerging technologies such as AI, automotive electronics, industrial automation, and edge computing are driving new quality requirements. How is the industry adapting to these evolving expectations?
Yeah. So I'm going to defer on that one to others in my organization. I will say that these trends are challenging the industry, because it is, as I indicated earlier, these advancements in the semiconductor industry that are helping to facilitate amazing innovation in these sectors. They are placing new requirements across the supply chain, and quality and reliability is the hallmark of our industry, right? It's that kind of base expectation for companies that manufacture, and so again, I think it's forcing companies to increase their capabilities, and that oftentimes requires investing in new new processes, new equipment, integrating AI and automation into the manufacturing process. Our industry is going to look a lot different. Our industry today looks a lot different than it did 10, 15 years ago. And in 10, 15 years time, it will look very different, right? Because we're going to be having to the requirements will be such that we will need to rely even more on AI, automation, and a whole suite of next gen manufacturing processes, given the high requirements.
Yeah, as they're going toward Industry 5.0.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So we oftentimes at the association talk about this as the factory of the future.
Yeah.
And it's important, and not everybody around, not all countries are moving as quickly towards the factory of the future.
Right.
But ultimately, that factory of the future is going to not only ensure quality and reliability and greater capabilities, but we believe it'll also offer greater yield, lower costs, and ultimately greater sustainability.
Thanks. And my next question is that, what opportunity do you see for Indian EMS companies and component manufacturers in the global aerospace, defense, and high reliability electronics markets?
Yeah. So I think from as an association, we work closely with the industry, and I think in India, because the caliber of manufacturing is so high, it lends itself to manufacturing in the aerospace and defense market in particular. And already you see a strong base of companies that are serving not only aerospace and defense companies in India, but aerospace and defense companies located around the world. And so again, I think we expect that will continue to grow, or because companies here are, especially in some of the key segments, like, again, on this trip, I've been impressed by the way in which the country seems focused on building a far larger PCB industry, right?
Yeah.
And along with that, the capabilities to fabricate these more sophisticated, high density interconnect PCBs. So again, we want to make sure that we're working with companies that are serving this sector, so that not only are they have access to the standards and their credentialing, but that they're in a position to help shape those standards and workforce programs as well. And again, I think ultimately this comes down to how well, in this kind of environment where things are changing so quickly, part of being asserting leadership in this market is also being a great student of these technology trends. So
Thank you. And my last question is that, sir, from the association's perspective, what are the most promising global growth areas for the electronics industry over the next 5 years?
I think AI is going to continue to be a strong growth sector. Seems like there's an insatiable appetite, right? For the electronics that go into data centers. At the same time, look at the geopolitical developments, aerospace and defense. I think countries around the world are increasing budget allocations for defense electronics. And so that will certainly be an area that will continue to grow. I think in India and Southeast Asia, you're going to see growth in the automotive industry. So these are a few areas that I would highlight as key sectors. I think the big question is, if I step back for a moment, the electronics industry, the market for electronics will continue to grow because electronics are becoming central to just about every vertical of our economy. If electronics are not in the product being produced, they are certainly in the manufacturing producing those products. So then the question is, if electronics is going to continue to grow, the question is, where will it continue to grow? And as we work with governments, and certainly as I speak to government leaders, and my colleagues speak to government leaders, part of the guidance we give them is that this industry will continue to grow. Again, in the matter of where, and countries need to be thinking more intentionally about how they can support the industry if in fact they want that industry to grow within their own borders.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. That's all from us. Thank you for the wonderful conversation and enlighten us with your thoughts.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you.